G'day, mate. Welcome to Capital Industry with me, Jetty. Now, previously, I've toured a couple of maps, a couple of islands, and they've all been in that pinnacle of automation, that 100% sustainability bracket. But then, Psyper sent me a map. He sent me a save, he asked for some feedback, and I decided it was worth a tour. It's not worth a tour because it's 100% sustainable. He hasn't reached that yet. But this is worth a tour for two reasons. And you'll probably get them from the title. It's the extreme amount of both OCD and hoarding. The two don't normally go together. Normally OCD maps have no hoarding, everything's done to ratio. There might be small buffers, but no hoarding. And OCD maps tend to be very, very neat. So, you know, they don't have large amounts of storage for the sake of having large amounts of storage. In Psyper's case, we have both. So I decided we need to have a look at this. We need to have a look at this. At the same time, you may notice this is the New Haven map. I can hopefully put in an overlay right now to show you the original map, but yeah, it's the original New Haven map, the one's designed for your first playthrough. And in Psyper's defense, this is his first playthrough, and we're going to start at this side of the map because, well, I figure it's a good spot to start. This is where we have nuclear reactors. We have 3 nuclear reactors running flat out. On top of that, the 4th one is actually running at tier 2, not hooked up to power. It's just making water with a tiny bit of storage, and well, they're half full. That there's a shocking amount of nuclear waste stored up, saved for later. Yeah. Also a shocking amount of uranium, like an awful lot of uranium. And in saying that, if we go look at the world map, it's a level 16 mine. Now, he is playing on the captain's difficulty, so it is a little bit easier to get uni, and it is, well, anything that costs uni is also slightly cheaper. So he does have that going for him, but it is, prior to when the devs did the update, have infinite mines on the world map. So he's running this uranium mine at level 16, being fully upgraded at full speed, mining 96 per minute, which, you know, is enough to run, what, 8 reactors? And he's running 4. With a tiny amount of storage. And the ship's just set to go. Like, just go. Like, as soon as there's more uranium out there, go. Get it. Bring it back. Yeah. Oh, and did I mention hoarding? That's uranium rods. 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 One rod takes 1 reactor 1 minute to burn through. He's got 4 reactors. That's 4,000 minutes. No, that's 1,000 minutes. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 minutes. Yep, there's a slight amount of hoarding going on here. Speaking of hoarding, it's not just uranium, it's also water. In fact, everything on this map has been hoarded. You're also going to find a lot of features that I've covered during my Let's Play, like the patent pending jetty pump and dump system. The patent has been submitted. It is still waiting for approval. The patents office said they'll be back to me shortly. But yes, we'll have lots of features that have been in my playthrough, also my tutorial videos. So you're going to find links up the top right-hand corner randomly throughout the video, also pinned down in the first comment below. Let's step into farms. Okay. Farming, he has a little bit of a unique style, which I do like the idea of. So he has, well, this farm is just green manure, because that way you don't suffer the debuff from not rotating crops. And this one's just making fruit, nice and simple. Next one is just making wheat. The next one is just making green manure, which means it's actually doing nothing. It's 100% doing nothing, but it's planned for the future. I would have just paused it, but no, he's choosing to run it. It is making manure. The next one's also making manure. This is the first one that's actually active. And he's using all 4 slots. Now, because he's using all 4 slots and also feeding it fertilizer, he probably doesn't need to have the manure in there as a cycle. It is going to bump up the fertility. The catch is, because it's already being fertilized with tier 2 fertilizer at 140%, it's probably not actually doing anything. In fact, it might drag the fertility down, because we can see these are capped at 120, because that's as high as you can get with fertility 2. Yeah, but that's besides the point. What he's done is he's filled every slot. Because every slot's filled, and it's one of the problems I've had on my map, that if I swap something, you know, if I don't have enough soybeans, and I plant 1 extra soybeans, chances in my case I'm actually removing something to plant something, but that's besides the point. I end up with a situation where I have too many soybeans then. So because he's using all the slots, it means your increments to go up and down when you're adding and removing a different crop to the cycle, much more minor, much more granular. So I think in my future playthroughs, I'm going to end up stealing an idea like this, where I actually populate all 4 slots and run my farms like that. But yes, you may notice fully fertilized with Fertilizer 2, and all 4 slots are filled. And this goes to every farm that's active. Not all the farms are active. Well, actually, that one's running manure right now. Yeah, fertility is dropping. There you go. We've all learnt a lesson. It's all been proven. Do not run Fertilizer Tier 2 and green manure, because you'll actually drop the fertility. On top of that, actually, we just pause this for a second. 10.1, 8.3, 7.3, that all get bumped up. Well, not because of extra fertility, but actually because it's a shorter cycle. We're not spending 2 months out of the 8 plus 4 plus 6, which is 8, 12, 18 months. 18 months. This takes us up to 20 months. 18, yeah, 18 and 2 is 20. Yep. This takes us up to 20 months. If we pull this out, we go from, well, the same amount of food over a 20-month average down to an 18-month average, which means a production rate per 60 seconds is actually slightly higher. Okay, continuing on with our story. Also means when the fruit's going to be planted, it'll actually start with a fertility of 120 and then have to go up with the fertilizer being added in. But yeah, I continue. I digress entirely. So yes, he's set up all his farms like this. On top of that, he has a couple of feeder belts, and we can see that, well, we've got your U-shaped belt plus your flat belt. He's merged all these together, brought them into, well, there is some spaghetti, okay? It is a factory game. There is always guaranteed to be some spaghetti somewhere. It's reasonably neat spaghetti compared to some of the mess that I make. And what he's doing is he is, well, bringing the food through a whole bunch of balances, just to make sure that things are not throughput limited, also adding in some extra belts along the way. And then he's doing the exact same as I've done, as using those filters and splitting things off. And then it comes back to the, well, I guess this would be a buffer. This would be a buffer. It's just a single container. So we could call this buffering. Yeah, buffering. Okay, so we have wheat, we have more wheat, we have soybeans. Okay, we're going to call this hoarding. Sugarcane, potatoes, corn, canola, and canola. Does anybody actually need that much canola? Like, it only goes into one item. You probably don't need that much canola, nor that much cooking oil, but we shall move on. And also a tiny amount for, you know, extra overflow. It is important to have an overflow. Might be a little bit too much overflow, and also any extra overflow automatically gets killed off. Converted into animal feed. Yes. Okay. Back into the food. Food's pretty much as is, or as was in my playthrough, you know, trying to maximize your food with as few machines as possible, and not overly complicate things. Yeah, food is very complicated. But yeah, we have good old snacks, of course. Then we have sugar, we have bread right here, we have animal feed, we have, well, at least that's been turned off, because turning it to fuel gas is very pointless. Over the back, we have more bread. It's just flour. Okay, so he's doing the flour here and then running the flour on a belt rather than 1-to-1 ratio. Is that a box full of flour? Of course it's a box full of flour. Why would it not be a box full of flour? Okay, like tofu. Okay, we'll get to the tofu. A couple of chicken farms, whole lot of animal feed, more chicken farms. He's making food packs here because he is in the process of, well, forcing himself to go sustainable. He doesn't really have a choice. We'll get to the map and the overview a little bit later, but he's basically out of some core resources. Because this being the New Haven map, there's not a lot of resources on the New Haven map. It's actually fairly poor, fairly simple. It's not as large as some of the other maps, so there are definitely less resources to go around. We have food packs, which you'll end up probably having to use for a contract. In fact, we can see that's already linked to something, so I think that's going to be set up very soon. We have sausage, never enough sausage. We also have meat production, which then gets sailed off. Funnily enough, I don't see meat Or do I? I do. I see excess meat getting turned into excess meat trimmings to then hopefully follow spaghetti. Get turned into sausages. Still not quite enough. Still not quite enough to feed the hungry people. Okay. All right. We're built upon a water patch. So we have a couple of groundwater pumps, pumping just a little bit of water. Again, 2 tanks is probably, moving from that buffer stage into that hoarding stage. Yep. We have fruit and veggies, which are a pain in the ass to balance. So I fully understand using 2. Even then, 2 containers is probably a little bit too much. 1 container I can get behind. 2, yeah. Okay. And then it comes into, well, as he puts it, the food waterfall. So he has every different food type. So we have tofu, we have cake, we have bread, we have fruit, we have veggies, we have eggs, we have snacks, we have potatoes, of course. We have the good old sausage and meat all coming down very neatly and then into not a hoarding problem at all. 2 containers of tofu, 2 containers of cake, 2 containers of bread, eggs, fruit, snacks, veggies, meat, sausages, potato, corn. Yep, I wonder how much food goes off in a warehouse. And then every single one of these he's feeding into 2 food markets. Main reason for feeding them into 2 food markets is probably a catch-22. It's probably a 1 to make sure that they actually have enough food. 2, it's probably also to make sure that the food, the amount of months of food you have left is a high enough amount, because the game only calculates on what you physically have connected in food markets. And like, I know in my game, it's telling me, 6, 12, 18 months, something like that. But I have unlimited food. It's always running in on belts. There's always going to be enough. In fact, I think I'm slowly building a stockpile, actually, considering the amount of stuff I am turning into chicken feed and into food packs to then trade for uranium. I definitely have a stockpile. But yeah, it only calculates what's physically in a food market attached to the colony. Okay, which brings us to the colony, also brings us to this. Yeah. This is fertilizer, like a lot of fertilizer. He has a whole bunch of air separators, also a whole bunch of ammonia. The ammonia is being trucked in. Yep. Also is saving the oxygen because, you might end up in a situation where you don't have enough oxygen. He is flaring off what he doesn't need, but yeah, there's such thing as too much buffer. Okay, so it makes a whole bunch of oxygen, also a whole bunch of, that's fuel gas to hydrogen. It goes in the next process. We'll get back to that. Of course, hydrogen into the next process being ammonia, more ammonia. And then, of course, converting the ammonia with some nitrogen into fertilizer 1, and then a whole bunch of mixes to make us our fertilizer 2. And again, not at all a hoarding problem. This is the fertilizer 1. Like that's a tank of fertilizer 1. That's a buffer. Fertilizer 2, on the other hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's hoarding. 100% hoarding. Yes. He doesn't have a problem with hoarding at all. And then we come on to, well, this is clean water into the housing, again with the patent pending jetty pump and dump method. Yep. And that is crammed in very neatly. What I say about like OCD, like everything about this is built very neatly, very tidy. There's been great care in every single pipe and belt that's been laid through this maze. Of course, we have the great poop processors. Very important to have poop processing, which then, of course, is going to convert that into compost. Compost actually does something interesting with. We'll get to compost a little bit later. He's buffering wastewater just in case. Does have an overflow, but buffering wastewater just in case, along with clean water and also fuel gas. Filter medium is trucked in, I believe. I actually haven't found out where filter medium is probably made where gold is. We'll get to gold. So yes, that brings us to the colony. Now the colony is yeah, I feel like there was a space limitation somewhere along the line and it just sprawled. It's probably the only thing that I just it doesn't align with the rest of the base. Everything else is carefully planned and carefully positioned out. The colony is like, screw it. They could just live anywhere. Yes. Any ships that we missed? No, haven't missed any ships yet. Okay, ships going around the outside. We have our very first ship, which is, there we go, food packs for crude oil. So he's bringing in food packs, bringing in crude oil with food packs. So he is moving across to sustainability slowly on the world map. In fact, he is mining crude oil still. There's still 82 years left here, but we are in the year 2800. Where's the next crude oil? That one's paused because it's empty. Unpause that. If you just set it to, oh no, if you set it to 0, it pauses as well. Okay, that one's empty. I believe that one's empty. Yep. That one's empty. So he's on the last crude oil on the map. Yeah, and there's only 82 years left. So he definitely has to move across sustainability bit by bit, which brings us to oil processing. Now, oil processing. Okay, first, well, actually, oil. Let's talk about oil for a moment. We may notice there's a tiny bit of oil right here, and this probably explains why there's 3 out of the 4 oils on the world map are all drained because, well, he brought it ashore and put it in tanks. The other thing you may notice is these are just level 4 ships, not the full level 8s, which comes with 2 catches. To run a level 4 ship over level 8, well, especially 2 of them, it technically uses more people and more fuel. It's more efficient to have a bigger ship than it is to have a smaller ship. You also notice that he has the reduced ship speed and save some fuel turned on as well, because obviously, well, it can't empty, which is probably half by design. On top of that, I'm willing to bet he didn't upgrade because, and this is one of the things that definitely frustrates me in Captain Industry, it's why I did a dedicated video on cargo docks. I did a dedicated video on cargo docks because I really want to know exactly what spacing I need to leave for my next playthrough between 2 docks to have cargo dock 8s in the future. Because the fact that you can't upgrade you can upgrade a 2 to a 4, but then to go from 4 to 6, you need to rebuild, and then you can upgrade a 6 to an 8. Upgrading a 6 to 8 is fine, upgrading a 2 to 4 is fine, but having to break down and rebuild to go from a 4 to a 6 is really annoying, because you also have to remove all the modules attached to the front, which is super frustrating. Like, the ship disappears and comes back and it's magically bigger, but yes, it means to upgrade this, he would have to remove 2 rows, at least 2 rows, worth of crude oil storage, which is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 40,000 crude oil barrels. That's a lot of barrels you got to shove somewhere, and instead he ran 2 small ships, both doing crude oil instead. It does technically mean that he's using more crude oil to go get the crude oil, which in turn uses more, well, he's using more diesel to go get the crude oil because he's using 2 small ships, which means technically he's burning through the crude oil faster to go get the crude oil because he didn't upgrade the ship. But, you know, I can sort of understand the frustration of not enough room to upgrade, which then, yes, brings us back into oil. So oil, in case you're curious, there's a few more oil tanks, just so there's some spares. There's also a tiny amount of diesel saved up as well. Also brine, like saving the brine just in case. Just don't build a little boy storage, build a big boy storage just in case. Same goes for sulfur. There's a tiny bit of sulfur saved up, and yeah, everything is saved. Like, everything is saved. There's a lot of saving going on, which brings us onto the oil build. Now, the oil build, you may notice, is very similar to my my spaghetti free oil, well, spaghetti free diesel, I think is the title of the video. Again, you pinned comment, whole bunch of videos. There's already going to be a water one, plus a nuclear one, plus the cargo ship one. Now we're onto the oil one. There's a, oh, and a nuclear power one. Well, after like 5 videos, I've covered a lot of topics, a lot of tutorial videos whilst playing Captain Industry. But yes, we have our oil build. So I made a video, spaghetti free diesel, and it does stage 1, 2, and maybe 3. Yeah, stage 1, 2, 3 diesel, or maybe that's it, whatever. There's probably 2, 3. I think there's 3 diesel videos now. But yes, I did stage 1, 2, 3 diesel, and he took that idea and ran with it. And one thing I did in mine is I had stage 1, 2, 3, and these 3 pipes down here ran for 1 set of 3, and then for my next set of 3 I had a new set of 3 pipes. He took that and mirrored it, and I like the idea of mirroring it. It's something I actually wanted to do myself, but again, shooting for a tutorial video, it needs to be easy to understand, so I chose to have separate pipes. But he shared it, which means you have a block of 6. Now, a block of 6 outputs 18 and 18 sour water. Conveniently, our sour water stripper happens to process 36 sour water, which means this all becomes one complete module. Also, it needs 9 plus 6, which is 15, plus 3, which is 18 steam. 18 and 18 is 36, plus another 16, being a total of 40 42 steam. So he has a single boiler at the back, which is running on a mix of liquids. We're not too worried about the mix of liquids, but it's producing 48 steam, which means this becomes a whole self-contained unit, which after you have a self-contained unit, you can copy and paste. And that's exactly what he did. He just copied and pasted, continuously till he had enough stage 1, 2, 3 distilleries to run all of his oil. Next thing, I don't think I made a video on this, but I know I definitely covered it during a Twitch live stream on Cap and Mystery. We worked out the most efficient way to get burnables to actually fuel things is from just distillery stage 1. So he's got a couple of stage 1s here, outputting just heavy and medium, which is then he's using that to create a majority of the steam. He's not burning off some of the other items, but it also means the sour water strippers are buried in here as well. And look, I can definitely call this spaghetti, but compared to some of the crap I come up with, this is neat spaghetti. Very, very neat spaghetti. Yeah. All right. So continuing through the oil, we have our buffers. Like one tank is a buffer. Bit of a big buffer for chlorine, but sure. Water, ammonia. Yep. It's all been buffered. And then we have, we have a couple of extra sour water strippers. These are because he is doing the slag for sour water, because he is in the process of going over to sustainability. He's also mined out all the coal, all the iron ore, all the limestone, and also all the gold on the map. So he is having to swap across to sustainability slowly, but this is obviously for that sour water contract. And then we come into the main buffer. Hoard. We have ammonia, like a lot of ammonia. Then we have an empty row. He has one whole row that's empty. I assume that's being saved for later. Then we have naphtha. Then we have fuel gas. Fuel gas, like I did mention, he is using it in a number of places to burn it off for different things. So I do understand why that's, physically here. He's also planned ahead. He has a little, pipe balance in here, which means that he can add in extra should he need to. I assumed it was to pull out extra, but obviously no, it's to add more to the buffer. He does have, at the end of all these builds, he does have a like you put a little tank here so the trucks can access it, and then take the excess and run it back into the system, into the cracking that he's added since, although I don't think he has nearly enough cracking. Then we have heavy oil. That's 1, 2, 3 and a tiny bit rows of heavy oil. I don't think he's thrown out or burnt a single piece of heavy oil if he didn't have to. He's just saved it forever. We have nitrogen, which you get from an air scrubber for basically next to free. Yep. And then we have carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is something we need to talk about in just a moment. And then we have water, like a lot of water storage. Okay, continue around the list. We have our cracking over here, which is our naphtha into fuel gas. Prior to that, naphtha is stolen. Here. Naphtha is stolen, as is diesel, to make rubber. So he's chosen to go for the less efficient. It is definitely less efficient. Everybody can agree it's less efficient to use diesel for rubber, but it means you don't have to worry too much about what your naphtha is doing. Okay, you can choose to use your naphtha for, as he has done, for plastic, and then whatever's left over, just crack it, into diesel, and everything ends up as diesel, and diesel becomes your stopgap, and that means your rubber never has an issue. He also has ammonia, which he's splitting right here into both hydrogen and nitrogen. A certain amount of hydrogen is going to cracking, like I said, to break down the naphtha into fuel gas, also more sour water, and also heavy into naphtha. I think, considering the amount of storage, probably needs to maybe turn on these ones to make more diesel, or just run these ones harder and faster. There's a certain amount of far too much heavy on the map. We do have excess sulfur, even though there's a lot of sulfur being saved. Yep. Excess sulfur comes over here and gets turned to slag, which of course is shipped off-world. We also have our plastic storage, 2 boxes. It's a little bit of a hoarding problem. Rubber, 2 boxes, a little bit of a hoarding problem. We also have graphite. Now, graphite is going to be an ongoing discussion we're going to have as we go through this map. We have found a couple of, CO2 to graphite makers, but we also have grand graphite storage. Yeah, the first row is empty. The second row is not empty. Neither is the third or the fourth or the fifth. That's all graphite. Like I said, he does have the cleanest air pollution I've ever seen, the cache it's being exchanged for large storage containers full of graphite. All right, continuing around the map, we have the next contract that's being set up currently. This is going to be for gold for Diesel, because he's out of gold, apart from buffers, which we'll get to shortly. We also have, this is the slag for sour water. Continuing around the map, we have one of the glass for coal with a, there's another glass for coal somewhere. We'll find it eventually. We have our quartz import. We have our vehicle parts 2 for iron ore. We have more water creation. Well, this is low pressure steam. This is low pressure steam from his exhaust scrubbers, like a lot of exhaust scrubbers. And one of the things I really liked that he did is, I have covered how to make, for steam, how to make long, thin pipes. Long, thin storage containers, also referred to as a pipe. He did the exact same thing with exhaust, because you can't put exhaust into a tank. I'm going with the fact that, the storages are made out of canvas and therefore they melt, therefore you can't put hot things in them. So, boiling hot exhaust, no. But you can put them in a long, thin tank made out of steel, normally referred to as a pipe. And that's exactly what he did with exhaust. He has run all the exhaust into, a whole stack of exhaust scrubbers, also taking out the CO2, which is not hot, because you can definitely put that into a storage container. And the CO2, it goes over to CO2 storage and then goes into a bunch of these guys, which then fill more graphite storage. Yep, like I said, CO2 will be an ongoing discussion. But this is low pressure steam from, actually, there's also some high pressure steam in here from somewhere. This is creating extra water. We have a lot of low pressure steam from the both the arc furnaces, which we'll find eventually, also from the exhaust scrubbing. Yes, so this is basically water generation. Next up, we have wood import. Then we have limestone. He has mined out all the limestone on the map, so he is bringing this in from the world map. In saying that, where is limestone? It's mostly full. He's got 550 years. It's plenty of time. He is in the year 2800, so he has spent a while playing. And then we come into, problems. Not problems. Hoarding. We have gold. He has no gold left on the map. Why? Because he's put it all into storage, like all of it in storage. We also have rock. There's a lot of rock being dumped in the map. In fact, actually, if we have a look around the outside, he's building, same as I did in my Let's Play, he's building piers. And the reason you build piers is, actually, there's an example. Where is it? Over here. Okay. We have two materials going here. We have a pier built in around the outside, which is normally 1 or 2 tiles wide. And then we have dumping general trash in the middle. And if we run a line out for the trash, we can see that it falls into the sea at a pretty shallow angle. It just slides forever. Whereas if we look at the rock on the other side, for the same height, it's only slid 3 and a bit tiles. And this is one of the reasons we put in a pier first, and then we dump in the inside with loose material. It also means, it actually has some sand left, which would have been part of the back beach, which got landfilled in. But yes, it does mean he's saving rock for, I'm not sure. I would have personally doubled the size of the island at this point, but he doesn't really need it because he's definitely used the space very well. He also has just a tiny amount of dirt, the smallest amount, which he has also, and I should mention this, he is digging out this section currently to bring it down to flat, probably because by going by the angle, there were some resources in here at some stage, and then all this goes into boxes, and it's automatically shoved into, the hoard. It's not a buffer, it's a hoard. Same with sulfur. Sulfur, this is all dedicated to sulfur. This is dedicated to sand. In saying that, he is now processing sand, which is, again, a nice little build that I really like the idea of. He is bringing in both the rock, turning rock into gravel and then turning gravel into sand. And what he's doing is all the rock comes in as just a mixed rock and gravel belt. All the sand and gravel comes out, and then actually filters the gravel out and then runs it priority back into the system. Now, you may notice that it's not running 100%. It has issues where it backs up from time to time. Also, I have noticed it sometimes it doesn't get stuck so much. The efficiency drops rather than it being all the machines running at once, like this back row is. We end up with just 2 or 3 running. Not because of, partly because of a lack of draw on the system, also partly because there's just the wrong material in the machine at the time, and you end up with the output belt being either too full of sand or too full of gravel, and things just can't run smoothly. So I like the idea as a concept, and as a design, I need to actually see it running full speed to know if it works better than just having a dedicated rock line with a dedicated gravel line, because it is one rock machine to 3 gravel machines. But I do like the idea as a concept. It probably needs a proof of concept further run. Back to the Hoard. We have iron, what little iron he has left on the island. We have a tiny bit of copper stored up. Copper is one of the actual resources he still owns, so I'm assuming he's in the process of mining that out reasonably quickly and regretting building on top of it. And then once it's done, he'll have to look at a contract. We also have some limestone, and did I mention biomass? I don't know why anybody would store biomass, but he decided that he was not going to waste anything. Waste not, want not. All the biomass has been saved. All right, continuing up into the actual main manufacturing hub. So then we have, this is what I'd refer to as a buffer. It's probably a little bit of a large buffer, but it is still technically a buffer. We have limestone, iron, coal, copper, which is funny because like that's full and that's empty. I'm not sure why. I know copper comes in over here. I'm not sure what the difference is between this side and that side, but there's lots of materials. We also have water, just a small amount. Then coal, copper, iron, sand, limestone. Limestone? Yes, and then sulfur, just small buffering. And then we come into the actual bus. So we have copper gets crushed, and we also add in the recycling. Recycling we'll talk about really quickly because I both like and hate the design. I like the design because it's very neat. I hate the design because I think I would probably rip my hair out before I could build this. He is, and we'll talk about glass because it happens to be right in front of us. He's bringing the glass out of both machines and then running them through a balancer. I don't think the balance is strictly needed. I think you could just have 2 connectors facing one another and call it a done. And then bringing the glass out. And he's bringing it over the chain of belts and then bring it back down to ground level. Then bring it up to meet the glass one from the other side of the build because it's mirrored. And then bring it into a balancer to then merge the 2 lines together to then bring them into, well, storage. Actually, no, because he's not even using enforcedly strict. I think the only reason to use a balancer over a connector is technically connectors have a priority system on them. Even if you have 2 of them facing one another and therefore neither should be priority, technically there is a priority, whereas a balancer is going to bring off both belts evenly, as we can see here with the iron. Yeah. But then we come back into, well, this is glass, broken glass storage. This is gold scrap storage. This is, I don't have a problem hoarding iron scrap. Also, I don't have a problem holding copper scrap. It's when you see empty containers like this, you waste. You do wonder what has been hoarded in the previously. All right, we have copper ore crushed. We then have iron ore crushed, which then of course gets the iron scrap added. We have acid production. I don't know. Well, acid goes to a couple places. It goes to glass smelting. It also goes to copper. So I sort of understand the reasoning behind mass producing it. I don't really understand the reason behind mass storing it, but at least it's only 1 tank. At least we haven't found a stack of 8 of them, which then brings us into copper smelting. Again, I do like the idea that he's just built them in long straight lines, and again, you'll find that a lot of these builds have been featured in my previous tutorial videos. Copper, funnily enough, you're a Mark II producing 48, you're doing 24, and then you're processing 24 and 24. Okay. So yeah, it is a copper smelter. Yep, nothing too fancy there. On this side we have iron, and again we have a nice straight bus structure. We do have slag. He is collecting slag here. We'll cover back to slag later. He is using it for other things. We also have this is the brine. This is the brine back from the water system from the exhaust, which is coming up here, going into a storage tank. Well, it's 1 tank, so we'll call it a buffer, which is then creating a lot of salt, which goes into 3 tanks, which is a bit more than a buffer. Yes, we then have iron ore, iron plate rather. We then have a whole bunch of oxygen nitrogen creation. The oxygen is here on the left, the nitrogen on the right. I know you can tell because they're both blue, and it's very hard to tell which blue is the right blue. Oxygen goes into steel smelting, obviously, which has been upgraded to arc furnaces. So this is the first place we've seen where I actually use some of that graphite, because we have 3, 6, 9, 12 graphite being used here. We'll find the arc furnaces eventually. There's going to be another, I don't know, 3, 6, 9 being used there, I think. but he's making a lot more than that amount of graphite. So he needs to probably seriously consider doing some upgrades. We also have more steel smelting over here, which is more oxygen, obviously. The nitrogen storage is maybe a little bit too much. And then on this side, we have steel, we have glass, we have vehicle parts. Again, that's a sizable buffer with some gold ore, sizable buffer. The quartz, sizable buffer. The diesel, this is diesel out to the ships for just this small section. They get their own independent, very large tank. We then have gold ore processing. So this is going to give us gold ore crushed, which then gives us gold ore powder, which then gives us gold ore concentrate with the gold scrap, which gets trucked over here, which then finally gives us gold bars, which then goes into a... Look, gold, I understand. Like, everybody wants to be the richest captain. Smelt the whole lot, make me the richest captain. There's only 4,000 here. This is the only one I completely understand, that if you had 12 of them in a row, that would make sense to me. But that's a small amount of buffering. Yep. Here we go. Here's the quartz on this side. So we have quartz, just arc furnace. No, actually, these are arc furnace Mark IIs, which is using a little bit more graphite. Another 9 to be exact. So, yeah. We also have... This is ammonia being brought in, and he's splitting the ammonia into nitrogen. Don't forget, we have a nitrogen buffer just here, but this is entirely separate nitrogen buffer. And then the hydrogen, which is being brought out to then run, well, up the bus a small amount to then be brought off to run into, well, the quartz. They're not smelters, they're reactors. The silicon reactors, because they need hydrogen. But yes, that goes in the silicon poly, which then gets pulled out and gets turned into silicon wafers. I'm surprised. This is the first one I've seen, the first small storage. Everything else to date has been the biggest type, which then goes into his microchips, yes, microchips processing, which is again straight out of my tutorial video. This is exactly how I showed or demonstrated to build microchip stage, well, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which then gives you microchips, and then another set of 4 here to give you another set of microchips. So he's making 12 microchips per minute, which means that's a lot of microchips saved up for later. Which then brings the bus to a right angle, because he ran out of island space, which then brings us over to here. But actually, let's go back a little bit, because we already had a split off here. Let's go back a little bit further. Let's start this end. We have concrete production, concrete slabs. Again, well, this one's interesting. This is a storage, and this is when he deconstructs things, the trucks have somewhere to put it to then run into the next machine, so it actually goes in storage. So this I sort of understand. I don't think it needs to be quite that large, but okay. We have slag crushed, which means this is one of the places he's taking slag. We also have cement making right here. Again, there is a room for the trucks to bring in cement. Not sure why they're bringing in cement, but maybe they're bringing in cement for reasons. We also have a lot of rotary kilns making a lot of cement. Funnily enough, they're not rotary kilns 2 yet, so he could have been using more fuel gas to make more CO2 to make more graphite, but he's chosen not to at this stage. We also have more glass storage. This is a lot of glass storage. For a lot of glass, in saying that he's trading that for coal, so that I sort of understand. We'll come back to that. Up here we have, this is glass mix. I gotta admit, it's the first time I've actually seen glass mix in a buffer to make glass. That's a bit much. And then we have probably the most interesting intersection I've ever seen. So I've seen buses with a right angle turn in them. That happens. I've seen buses with a T intersection, and like this is Captain Industry. Like, Factoria really lends itself towards a bus really well. Satisfactory, I've seen buses sort of work. More often they don't really work because of just belt throughput. Captain Industry definitely has a belt throughput problem when it comes to the idea and the concept of a bus, but I'm yet to see a 4-way intersection in a bus in any of the games. But he's done it, and he's actually done it reasonably neat. Like, I know if I was left with this mess, it would have been a disaster, but this has come out, I would consider, actually quite well, as long as we ignore that salt belt. That salt belt has a speciality in it. Okay, let's continue up the bus. We have household goods off to the right, along with household appliances and consumer goods. They all disappear off to the housing block. Next up, we have electronics, good old electronics, also a whole lot of mechanical parts. On the right-hand side, we have construction parts 1, into construction part 2, into construction part 3. The construction part 2, I could sort of understand a big box. You know, this is the input in case the trucks end up with some. This is also an input in case the trucks end up with some. Yeah, construction part 3, I don't really see the understand the giant storage, but you know, it is what it is. On the left hand side we have maintenance 1, plus we also have making vehicle parts 1 to make vehicle parts 2 to make that's construction parts. So we have vehicle part 1, vehicle part 2, vehicle part 3, okay, over here. Meanwhile, construction part 1, 2, 3 and 4's over there. Yes, we have PCBs being converted into electronics 2. Now we actually have electronics 2 on the bus. We obviously have maintenance 2, which of course now we have electronics 2 on the bus. We also have the microchips we made earlier. We then get into electronics 3, which is surprisingly just a little box, not a big box, just a little box. I'm willing to bet he's really wishing he'd made this a big box as well. And then we come into maintenance 3. Finally, at the far end, we have our server creation, which is probably good because he's going to need a significant amount of data centers if he needs to replace all the smelters with arc furnaces, so we can start using the small amount of graphite that we've stocked up in the meantime. A couple of honorable mentions. We do have a small standalone build here. This is making the filter medium. Again, it's rock into gravel. That's a lot of gravel being stored up to then have sand being delivered directly rather than just crushing the rock into the gravel into sand to then, coal's being brought in to make a lot of filter medium. Filter medium is an odd one. It's only used in, well, poop processing. It's also used in uranium processing, and it's used in gold processing. They're the 3 places it's technically used. So it's sort of a catch-22. Do you have a centralized build and you have the trucks moving around, or do you have a separate build for each one of them? Which means you need to have, well, technically 2 inputs. You need to have rock to crash into gravel and to crash into sand, and coal to then make the filter medium. I went with several separates, but you know, it is an option. This is an honorable mention as well. Actually, can I get that built? I can. This is his next step in buffering technology. This is the new and improved exhaust buffer method. Yeah, it is tier 3 pipe stacked 4 tiles high in a neat little square. Input here, output there, and I have no idea how much storage is in there. You'd have to fill it to find out, but that's impressive. That is a very, very high scale of, oh my god, that's impressive. Okay, last couple of honorable mentions we have is medical. This is, it's funnily enough, it's one of the builds that's not square. Like every other build I've seen so far has been pretty much designed around that perfect square, that perfect 4-sided shape. This one's slightly different. This one's our medical. So we have sugar being trucked in. That's not salt, that's a giant bucket full of sugar, along with plastic being brought in here to make ethanol. Ethanol and plastic give us disinfectant, a lot of disinfectant. Funnily enough, this warehouse is just a short one. It's only a level 3. It's not a full level 4, it's just a level 3. We also have carbon dioxide being gathered up here to be turned, guess what, into, just to be stored up for later. When he gets to arc furnaces, he will be set. He will be able to burn those arc furnaces on that graphite forever. Yup. Okay, we also have our sharp things to go with the disinfectant to give you medical supplies number 1, with a tiny amount of ammonia to also give you your antibiotics. That's steel import. That's medical 2 with your antibiotics. Over this side we have glass, which actually goes over there. It's curious. Okay. Oh no, glass goes right here. This is pop. Oh, that's right, it's morphine. So over here we have the morphine production, which requires the hydrogen fluoride, which you should definitely brush your teeth with, because all toothpaste has fluoride in, along with the ammonia and also steel import, rock to make the hydrogen fluoride in a tank, which I have to admit I have never seen in a tank, but I am not at all surprised that Captain Industry is choosing to use a blue liquid, because up until recently just about every liquid in the game was blue. And almost all of them were this shade of blue. Funnily enough, a lot of liquids are blue, but that's entirely besides the point. And then finally, we take our anesthetic plus our morphine and our medical supplies 2 and make medical supplies 3, which again are put into a tiny box. In saying that, he hasn't swapped over yet, but I do believe he's going to use medical supplies 3 to bring in the copper ore in the future, which should make his life easy, considering I'm willing to bet this is vastly overbuilt for what he's actually doing. And oh, this is one I wanted to look at. This is a very important one. I liked this idea. Okay, so right here we have a dumping zone beside a digging zone. Okay, so in here is where he's bringing all the excess compost. He does turn compost into... Actually, no, he doesn't turn compost into fertilizer. No, because he's using fertilizer too. So right here, on this little area here, trucks can drive up with compost. And what they do is they drive up this little ramp and they dump the compost off the end. Okay, and because it's in retaining walls and that sort of stuff, you know, trucks don't have any issues, blah, 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 everything's fine. They just tip it over the edge. Once they tip it over the edge and it hits the ground, it instantly turns into dirt. So this is set as a mining zone. This is set as a dumping zone. So the compost can get dumped out, instantly turn into dirt. If it falls outside of the, well, four dumping squares, it gets turned to dirt. The truck dumps it into the bucket goes to the other bucket, and then it gets shipped over to, well, one of the many stockpiles. We weren't out of stockpiles, not even close. I do also want to mention the Congo line of miners. He is mining everything into storage boxes, which are then being belted around the map into, well, storage. It's quicker and easier that way. And this particular little section of hill, he's attacking from like all 4 sides. We also have many piers going in around the outside of the map. This is all done with rock, because it has a much higher shear factor. It doesn't slide nearly as far into the sea. And then I think it's on this side of the map. Yes, he's then infilling it with well, stuff that slides. Like in the case of this is trash. So trash is slidden all the way out to here, which is what? How many tiles? Well, we can see the angle right there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 tiles. And then the rock has slid 3 tiles. Yeah, that sort of explains the difference between one material and the other. But yes, he is dumping out loose material into the holes after it's been peered in. This side, funnily enough, is set at height 10, whereas I believe the rest of the island is at a height 3. Height 1. Yeah, so height 2. So the island has this height adjustment, you know, about halfway through, and he's chosen to keep that height adjustment. The only thing I probably would have done differently is in my one thing I did in my particular playthrough is I just decided level 2 was it. We're just flattening everything to level 2. If it's not level 2, I ain't building on it, or if I do build on it, I'm going to end up unbuilding on it in the future. But yes, this was Psyper. Psyper's little base, proving that both OCD and Hoarding can work together in perfect harmony. Well, mostly. It was interesting. It was definitely a different style of island to wander through. And it's definitely proven that given enough construction parts, you can store just about anything. But with all that said, I'm going to leave this particular video here. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the very next video. All right, bye.